Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and the Sonata hybrid that you see in front of me promises one of the longest cruising ranges on a tank of fuel on the market here in 2025. This, according to the EPA and mixed driving, should get over, I think it was 600 miles. I'll have to check, I'll put it right here below, 600 miles of claimed fuel range with its tank of gas. And on the highway, I suspect it should do even more than that. So we're gonna put that to the real world test next week by taking this Sonata Hybrid Limited from here in Irvine, California, all the way to Las Vegas for CES. We're going to do some driving around Vegas and then come back, and I'm gonna try to do the entire trip on one tank of gasoline. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Sonata has seen a little bit of a refresh for 2024, this being a 2025 model, essentially no changes. I'll have to actually double check. I literally just got delivery of this car 15 minutes ago or so, and tried to get out here quick before the sun went down to do a little video intro. The one you're looking at here in top trim is $39,000, which in the grand scheme of what cars cost these days doesn't seem too bad for everything you're getting. A few things I'm liking right off the bat is this sidewall. Yeah, look at that. That should soak up the bumps nicely. I really like this red paint as well as the tan interior. I think this is the same color combo as the last Sonata Hybrid that I reviewed years and years ago. I think that was over 4 years ago at this point. One of the very early Daily Motor reviews. Might even be about 5 years ago. Wow, been doing this for a minute. Not only are we going to be taking this car for that 600 or so miles of driving on one tank, but we're going to be doing it with passengers as well. So I'm going to have my buddy Dax, and I think we might have Anish as well coming out to Vegas with us. So it'll be a good real-world kind of usability test for this facelifted Sonata Hybrid. Right off the bat, though, I'm seeing a lot I like. I see some ambient lighting that should be nice. For passengers, I'm seeing a lot of rear seat room. Headroom will be interesting. Hopefully that's good for Dax. He's a little bit taller. We've got air vents and 2 USB-C ports for power. We should have room in the back for our luggage. That'll be interesting. We've got a wireless device charger here, and I'm already paired up with the wireless Android Auto that we have. Very glad to see that. We've got heated and cooled seats, dual zone climate control, decent amount of center console space, 2 different sizes of cup holders. Okay, I think this is going to be a decent cruiser. Setting off here. Yeah. Oh, we do need to put a little bit of air in our tires, it looks like. Door placard is 35 psi cold, and we're down around 33. I'm going to have to fill that up. Oh, yeah. Feeling that sidewall go to work over these speed humps. Very nice. We've also got a panoramic sunroof, which is something you don't often see in sedans. That's going to be nice. This might turn out to be one of the best high mileage sort of vehicles on the market, because if it really does get around its EPA numbers on the highway, which I'm skeptical of, because hybrids are not at an advantage when it comes to highway cruising. You're not getting much advantage of the electric motor in there. It's pretty much all just burning gasoline. But if it does do well on the highway, you're going to be able to go a very long stretch without fueling. And we do have one of the best active lane keeping functionalities on the market in Hyundai's highway driving assist. Yeah, getting that instant torque from the hybrid. Foot to the floor. Not a speed demon, but also not grating on the ears. So I'm glad to hear that. Settles right down. Yeah. Pretty quiet in here. Fairly small steering wheel. Okay, the only con I've kind of noticed is something that's been bothering me with a lot of new Hyundai vehicles. This seat doesn't go low enough, and I don't understand what's going on over at Hyundai. But I do not have much headroom, being a 5'10" person, and I'm gonna have to have Dax sit in here. He's 6'2" or 6'3" or something like that. I'm gonna see if his head hits the ceiling. But the next time you see me, or at least my hands, will be when we are fueled up and heading out from Irvine to Vegas. So we will catch up with you for the start of our road trip. We are 145 miles away from Irvine. We've had a freshly topped off tank this morning. Tire pressure set to their door placard 35. And 2 other gentlemen in the car. You may recognize Dax and Anish from some of our previous videos. And we're headed to Vegas. We're about halfway there. And at this point, tracking a little bit under where we need to be in order to make the round trip on one tank of fuel. 43.5 miles per gallon according to the vehicle's readout. From my calculations, based on the 13.2 gallon fuel tank here in the Sonata Hybrid, we need to be averaging at least 46 miles per gallon over the whole trip to get back to Irvine without putting gas in the car. That being said, I did brim the tank, which I know, you're not supposed to fill the tank all the way up regularly, but for the purposes of this test, I thought it was, I thought it was worth doing, because if you really wanted to see how much you physically could go on the tank of fuel here in the Sonata Hybrid, I thought filling it all the way up made the most sense. So we might have a little bit more than 13.2 gallons in the tank as fuel went up into the filler neck. Either way, according to the car's range readout, we should actually be pretty good, because we only have 124 miles left on this trip and then 469 left on the car's range. But considering that there's a decent amount of uphill necessary to get out of Southern California up here toward Vegas, I think we should be pushing our average back up close to 46 by the time we're on our way back. Now, that being said, I'm not driving conservatively or hypermiling or anything like that. I've had the cruise set at 75 miles per hour for most of the trip. I'm kind of passing people. I'm not sticking behind trying to draft or anything. We've got the climate control going. I've got mine 73 auto. Dax has 71 auto. We've got luggage in the back. I mean, this is a proper normal trip. I'm driving comfortably, and I just want to see how much range can you really expect here from a car that promises some of the longest highway range on the market. As for the rest of the vehicle, I've really been appreciating the highway driving assist. I simply set it, and don't quite forget it, but you can really leave your hands off the wheel for a good amount of time. You can see it's keeping us comfortably right in the lanes and letting me know that there's somebody in my blind spot right now. If I were to turn my blinker on, get that nice subtle beep. That being said, I have found with the Hyundais that the blind spot monitor is a little conservative, because there are times when I want to get my blinker on before I've actually gotten past and overtaken the vehicle next to me, so that I can let the people behind me know that I'm getting ready for my lane merge. But then I have a beep happening, and sometimes that interrupts our conversation or our music or something like that. So I should try to get into the settings and turn that beep functionality off. But other than that, it's been a nice place to be. So we're going to see if our fuel economy continues to tick up, and we're going to make our way into Vegas. I should also point out that it's been pretty ideal climate conditions for most of this trip. We got 66 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny right now, and it was about this temperature when we left Orange County as well. So pretty good for climate. Also, looking back at Anish, I gotta say, pretty happy with the rear seat room. He looks comfortable. He said he's been comfortable back there. He's got the rear flip down armrest. He's got the air vents, and you got USB-C ports back there as well if you need to charge up. Dax, I'm curious, you're a little taller than I am. How's your headroom then? Looks like you're pretty close.
Hair's touching a little bit, but we're hanging in there.
What's your actual height?
6'2".
6'2", okay. I'm going to have Dax, before we totally end this trip, I want him to sit in the driver's seat to see. But you can already see how at 6'2", I mean, he's really close. If it weren't for the sunroof, his hair's touching a little bit. He's got to be considerate of his hairstyles. So, like I said at the beginning of the video, that's been my only weird quirk with the Sonata so far, is just that the seats don't go as low as I'd like them to. But we're going to continue on with the trip and see how it goes. Starting off our return leg back into Irvine, and not looking promising according to both how much fuel we have left and the car's fuel economy. I don't know if it's just something to do with kind of getting going, getting the motor warmed up or what, but the car really isn't that efficient at the start of drive. So we have been slowly getting our way up closer to 40 miles per gallon, and I know there was a little bit of an uphill crawl getting out of Las Vegas, but only 39.2 miles per gallon right now for our current trip. Total since refueling back in Orange County, 42.8 mpg, and we ended up having to do more driving around Las Vegas and the surrounding area than I expected. So even if the car doesn't make it all the way back home on one tank, it'll still be interesting to see how far we do end up going, because we've traveled 383 miles, we've got 191 miles left on the tank that the car is predicting, but 250 miles to go to get back home. So again, not necessarily expecting to make it at this point, since we had to do an extra 80 to 90 miles of driving around Vegas, but it'll still be interesting. I mean, we do have some tailwinds. We've got the Santa Ana winds carrying us in to southern California a little bit and some of that elevation that we're going to lose. So I don't know. Crazier things have happened, but we'll just kind of have to see. Well, as expected, we are not even going to get close to getting all the way back to Orange County on this tank of fuel. However, I do think if we had eliminated those 100 plus miles or so of running around general Las Vegas, then I think we would make it. I really do. That being said, even at current mileage, it would be close because we've done 530 miles since we filled up the tank all the way to the tippy top, and we have 30 miles of fuel remaining according to the vehicle's readout. The gas gauge is all but disappeared at this point, so it is time for us to get fuel. That being said, the route from Orange County out to Vegas and back has a good amount of elevation climbing out of Riverside County. So I do think we would really see some improvement in numbers in that last section. So again, if we weren't having to fill up, if we didn't do those miles back there, would it have seen enough improvement at the very end to make it? I think it probably would have. I think it would have been really close, but we probably would have made it. That being said, kind of given the mileage that we've seen, not crazy impressive. I think most relatively fuel-efficient cars, sedans, and maybe some of the really big SUVs, the diesels with big tanks, you're going to see more impressive numbers out of them from a range standpoint. I understand why Hyundai only puts a 13-gallon fuel tank in the Sonata, just because it's still a plenty longer range than a lot of vehicles, and it's going to be plenty for most people. And why would they make the vehicle heavier and have to take up more space with the fuel tank if it's still getting 500-600 miles depending on the driving? But if this were something like a Passat and they put a 17 or 18-gallon fuel tank in here, or even up to something like a 20-gallon tank, you'd be able to go really, really impressive distances without getting fuel. Aside from the fuel economy, though, I've still been really happy with just driving this around. Aside from that slightly high seating position, it's nice, it's smooth, it's quiet, sound system's strong enough. This is still a very good road tripper. So I'm going to grab some fuel here in 6 miles, make it the rest of the trip home, and record some of our fuel economy. When I fill up at this tank, it's not going to be an exact apples-to-apples refill because it might be a little different than the pump we filled up at, but I'll still make note of how much fuel we put in the vehicle, do a little bit of a manual fuel calculation, and then I'll wrap up all my thoughts with you after this about 600 or so mile trip tomorrow. Back in Orange County, fueled up and with fresh thoughts on the Sonata Hybrid. I'm going to take you through some of my pros and cons, but before we do, let's take a look at our final fuel economy numbers, because as I expected, we got some pretty significant fuel economy bump on that last section. I think when I got back into Orange County, I was averaging over 70 miles per gallon on that last leg from where I filled up. So it was essentially a whole 70 or so miles on 1 gallon of fuel, which is pretty cool. Our final vehicle readout when I got home after 622 miles of travel and nearly 12 hours was 46.5 miles per gallon. So if we bring up our calculator real quick here, a 13.2 gallon fuel tank at 46.5, look at this, 610, 622. So we barely just would not have gotten home if you consider that we were able to use the entire tank to get back based on the extra mileage we did in Vegas. However, we should have easily been able to make it from Orange County to Las Vegas, stop there, and come directly home on 1 tank of fuel. We should have even had some wiggle room, which is pretty cool. I think it's going to be useful to somebody, but more so just showing you that yes, even though we weren't exactly getting the 51 mpg that the EPA stated for this highway fuel economy of this car, considering I had 3 grown adults in here plus luggage on the way out, we were fighting winds, there was elevation change, and I was traveling at 74 miles per hour with my climate control set in the desert. I mean, the fact that we at least got roughly the mixed driving estimate around 46, 47 miles per gallon is pretty darn cool. And as strange as it is, I don't have time to run a standard daily motor highway fuel economy test on this car just because of the timing of this week. I had to be at CES, and then I actually got sick earlier in the week, so I wasn't able to take the car out before it's getting taken away from me. However, I am confident that it would get somewhere between 51 and 47 miles per gallon. I bet you it would be right about 48 miles per gallon or so, which hey, is pretty darn good here in 2025. Just in case you were curious, we ended up putting in 12 gallons exactly on that fill up, which means I theoretically had just over a gallon left, which lines up with the vehicle's readout that if we were getting 46.5 miles per gallon, I just barely wouldn't have gotten home based on those figures. So I really did enjoy taking the Sonata on that trip. It was an awesome car for it. I do have a few cons, but they're very minor and very few and far between. The first one, as I'm sure you predicted, is the seating position. It's been my biggest con for a number of the 24 and 25 model year Hyundais I've driven. I am planning on doing an email or phone call to Hyundai PR here soon and asking them what's going on with the seating position in your cars. Why is the back of the seat so high, unable to go lower? And you guys saw Dax is only 6'2", but his head was hitting right up against the roof here, and that's unfortunate that we're not able to get the seat lower. So it's not only my comfort position, but the fact that if you're a taller individual, you're going to have trouble fitting in some of these newer Hyundai products. Next up, let me get the car on here to show you. This is pretty minor, and I understand there are ways to sort of get around it. However, you can't get a digital speed readout in this center cluster, the center of the cluster, this little scrollable information screen. And that's a bit of a shame to me because I know it's just a software situation. You have speed on the left, you have digital speed up in the head-up display, and if I were to change the gauge cluster theme, I could get digital over on the left, but I don't like the look of those gauges. So why not just give us another screen to scroll through here and allow me to get digital speed? Let me click through here and make sure it's not something I can customize. Now, it doesn't seem like something I can find. Let me know if I'm missing something, but again, it's minor. It would be nice to have it right there as an option. And the last con is fairly subtle, but at $39,000, it's a bit difficult for me to justify the Sonata over the Tucson. The Tucson provides very similar interior space from a seating perspective, but more space to put things in the back, probably a little bit more headroom, and just that general usability and ease of getting in and out of, that most people are looking for these days, and the sales numbers speak to that clearly. I understand why you might want a sedan, but most people are going to be willing to give up that 10 miles per gallon or so, 10 to 15 mpg on the highway in order to get the extra usability, style, and convenience and comfort of a crossover. But on to the pros, and the first one comes in the configuration. The hybrid comes in SEL or Limited, and no packages on those. And I really like that because then you know, okay, this is exactly what the SEL is going to come with. This is exactly what the Limited is going to come with. You don't have to, oh, well, if you get the SEL convenience package, then you can get these heated seats and steering wheel and everything. It's like, nope, very straightforward configuration. And what's really cool, this one has this beautiful red paint on it, and it's only a $500 option. We know plenty of other vehicles that'll charge you $2,000, maybe even $3,000 for something like red paint or black paint or something crazy like that. Hyundai actually gives you most paint options complimentary and then only charges you for 2 of the different paint colors, one of them being this, and it's just $500. So in the grand scheme of the car, really not that expensive. And there are 3 different interior color combinations for the Limited and 2 different for the SEL, and those are all baked into the cost too. So you can choose this cool tan leather scheme here, and it's not going to cost you anything extra. The next pro, again, comparing to the Tucson, I think this is a more handsome and stylish interior and well designed interior than the Tucson. The Tucson's a little bit more functional, but a little bit more utilitarian because of that. The Sonata has a nicer looking dash. They've built things in a little bit more attractively, a little bit more contouring, looks a little less stark than the Tucson, but still keeps the functionality of having the wireless device charger right here, of having the column mounted shifter, of having these buttons and knobs. So it's functional, but also looks better than the Tucson and quite good overall. For the next pros, I'm going to slam the door. You hear that solid thud. Start the car up. Are we actually already running? No, we're not. Sometimes you can't tell with the hybrid. But the next pro is general refinement. This car is so quiet on the highway. It's so smooth. The suspension takes big bumps and small bumps well. Going over bumps like this, no creaks and rattles coming through the cabin. It's a well-built and refined package. And what I appreciate is the cohesion. Some of the problems I had with the Sonata N-Line is that part of the car felt like this grown-up, mindful, responsible family sedan, And then other parts of the car felt boy racery and kind of hopped up, and the general ethos of the car didn't come together in a cohesive package. You get in something like the Elantra N, it's like, okay, I understand the point of this car, it understands the mission, it all makes sense. And in the other direction, the Sonata Hybrid feels like that as well. This is a grown-up, mature car for somebody who puts on a lot of miles, probably just them in the car, but wants to take some people sometimes and have them be comfortable. Everything about this car feels well thought out and executed, and I'm just happy with it. It makes sense to me. Next, the ease of use inside this cabin and how well laid out and functional everything is. Yes, they managed to make everything look good, but they also managed to make it easy to use. We've got real physical buttons on the steering wheel, volume scroller, physical buttons up here for various elements of the infotainment, volume control, tuning knob over on the right, dual zone climate control with real knobs in order to turn the temperature. And these aren't technically buttons, but they're at least physical, dedicated, individual haptic buttons that you can touch for essentially all of your climate control functionality. We have a wireless device charger down here that's grippy so your phone doesn't slide around on it. And because we have this column shifter right here, there's a lot of room in the interior. So I found myself putting my phone up here sometimes while Dax's phone was charging. And we had sunglasses and wallet going over here. And look at this. This is a metal 32-ounce water bottle that fits with room to spare in this larger cup holder. And then they have a smaller cup holder behind it in order to hold smaller water bottles. And technically I could force, well, my 32 is not going to fit super well there, but a plastic 32 might. So it's as though engineers and designers actually used this car and thought, okay, how can we make it even better? What parts work, what parts don't? And there was an incredible amount of thought into this interior. In fact, look at this little side sort of pocket over here that's probably not even really its function, but I found myself putting my phone in there every now and again because it just kind of sits right nicely there on the side. And then there's even more space freed up here. So if you're somebody who drives around with two phones, maybe that's something you want to consider. Very, very happy with the layout and execution of this interior. My last pro is the powertrain. Now, yes, it didn't quite achieve its EPA numbers in that real-world environment where we're traveling faster than the speed limit at highway speeds, dealing with real-world sort of conditions. But you have to realize the delta, the meaningful difference between 50 miles per gallon and 45 miles per gallon is very subtle and a lot less statistically significant than the difference between, say, 25 miles per gallon and 20 miles per gallon. So I'm still very happy with the fact that this larger sedan that drives well was able to get over 45 miles per gallon in the real world. But not only is it efficient, it's also very smooth. A lot of people are going to appreciate that this runs a conventional transmission, not a CVT, so you're going to have a very normal car driving sort of experience. But then it's not a dog either. You can actually get up and go fairly confidently and significantly just by putting your right foot down, or even better, hitting the sport mode button, which essentially just makes the accelerator more sensitive and gives you more actual throttle application when you press the accelerator pedal down to a certain point. But it does feel peppier, and with the combination of the electric torque and the conventional transmission and the engine, it comes together confidently. Here we go, sport mode, foot down. Lot of lag right there, but once it did finally get into gear, and we're pulling up a hill, powerful enough, and you can actually even use the paddle shifters here to manually shift gears. So if I were driving spiritedly in the mountains or something like that, I could have it hold in third, and my power is a little bit more ready to go. I could shift like that. So it's not a canyon carver, and it's certainly not a replacement for something like the Sonata N-Line. However, I would rather have a car that works excellently for the 85% of my driving that I do, probably closer to 90% of my driving that I do, that's daily commuting and real world usage like this, and then only okay for spirited driving, rather than the alternative, which is the N-Line, where it's great for the spirited driving that I do 10 or 15% of my time, and then only okay at doing the normal world driving. So this one, between the air vents in the back and the refinement of the powertrain, the fuel efficiency, all of it comes together for this really great package. And I've been really happy with it, and I would be happy to own this car as well. But now we must get back static and put the Sonata Hybrid on the Daily Motor leaderboard. The GM leaderboard is going to be pretty easy for this one because it is the first car of 2025 that I'm reviewing. So, top spot, first place with a Hyundai Sonata Hybrid Tucson. Yeah, not necessarily that interesting when you're the first car to be reviewed for the year, but easy enough. I do quite like the car though. I do think that the sedan market is well honed in at this point because the Camry's good, the Accord's really good, and the Sonata's really good. And I don't think the Sonata has enough of an argument for price to really put it up and be above those others. So really, I recommend you test drive all three, see what you like the most. For me, I'm sorry Hyundai, but it would probably be the Accord. But I do fully admit that this has a lot more features and I think looks better than the Accord. I just love the chassis of the Accord as well as the powertrain. But I think this is more efficient, if I remember correctly. It's hard to compare apples to apples without getting time to do the highway fuel economy test. So it's really going to come down to personal preference. They're all quite strong. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the Hyundai Sonata in general, check the link below. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.